From the 1920s to the 1950s, the depths of Lake Tahoe were rumored to contain countless bodies, as it was supposedly a popular dumping site for mob activity. A story goes that a fisherman cast his line on the south shore, innocently enjoying his pastime. Suddenly, when his fishing pole was jerked, he thought he had caught something. But unfortunately, to his horror, what the fisherman pulled out of the lake was a human ear. Another story tells of a fisherman pulling out a three-fingered hand instead. Regardless of what the true story is, the point is that Lake Tahoe holds a plethora of secrets. Like many famous lakes in the United States and around the world, tales of more than just murder surrounded these bodies of water, but the unknown and paranormal as well. For where the dead bodies are rumored to rest in these large bodies of water, some say something large and living accompanies them as well. The indigenous Washo people speak of a potentially deadly entity in their cultural folklore that haunts bodies of water, known as water babies. Water babies are spirits that carry on a similar legend to that of mermaids, but instead presenting themselves as depictions of adorable children crying out into the void. Although what they definitively look like may vary amongst tribes, some would say water babies are more reptilian in nature instead. Regardless, interaction with these entities is a very sensitive and sacred matter. Staying on course with Washo beliefs, the presence of water babies can very well mean that death or tragedy is coming. Their eerie, infant-like cries foretell a warning of danger to come. Cave Rock on the southern side of Lake Tahoe was once a sacred spot to the Washo people, where the water babies resided. And even though their presence may have inspired doom, healers of the tribe were the qualifying members to consult with the waterborne entities, providing them with offerings such as corn, pine nuts, and bread, which would be sealed by a pitch in a basket before being submerged in the water. These offerings were made in hopes of providing a bountiful harvest of fish and offering extra protection for their people. However, on the occasions tribesmen didn't return home from Cave Rock, it was assumed they were drowned by the beings. However literal the folklore of the water babies is perceived, it is believed that they ultimately symbolize the sacred relationship that native people have with nature, this one being tied to the element of water, how powerful it is, and how it should be respected. Other tribes, like the Paiute, also have their own version of events with water babies stemming from Pyramid Lake, Nevada, and Owens Lake, California, detailing different tales of their origin. Even more akin to mermaids, they say that water babies simply lure in victims with their human-like cries, only to overpower and drown whoever comes looking. In one of the more tragic origin stories, it's alleged the water babies are the product of multiple infants being tossed into regional lakes due to malformation or birth defects, or maybe that a curse was placed upon the lake long ago. All in all, there seem to be countless stories across numerous cultures on the subject, but on the topic of Lake Tahoe specifically, there is another mystery that raises questions about what lives in the water's depths. Measuring as far down as 1,645 feet, Lake Tahoe, like many deep lakes, is home to its very own set of mysteries, one of which being a local mascot, Tahoe Tessie, aptly named after the Loch Ness monster, or Nessie. Tahoe Tessie is just as much of an enigma. Much like the Loch Ness monster, Tessie also appears to have attributes almost identically to its Scottish counterpart. Legend describes her as a long, snake-like creature, perhaps resembling a plesiosaur, but witness accounts tend to vary. What's agreed upon by believers is that something prehistoric lives in these waters. In fact, her legend can be traced back more than 100 years. November 21st, 1897, the San Francisco Call-and-Post publishes the story of a wealthy resident named I.C. Coggin. Coggin recounted a sighting to the newspaper that he hadn't forgotten in 2 years. In 1895, he claimed to have seen a lake monster in astounding detail, lurking in Lake Tahoe. Coggin described it to have had a 14-foot wide head, a 600-foot body, black scales, and resembling a, quote, unpleasant serpent. Whether I.C. Coggin legitimately witnessed this in 1895, a local legend was seemingly born from this report. Throughout the early and mid-20th century, sightings of an unusually large creature in Lake Tahoe became more and more commonplace. And in the 1950s, newspaper columnist Bob Price was the one to create the name Tahoe Tessie, including the creature as a friendly character who would help people who were in trouble on the lake, only increasing the legend's popularity. The stories didn't stop here, though. In the 1950s, 2 off-duty police officers were spending their time boating on the lake when they supposedly witnessed Tessie up close. Per their story, both men said their boat was traveling over speeds of 60 miles per hour when a sudden black hump emerged from the surface, easily keeping up with their pace. While the fullness of whatever it was wasn't in full view, enough of the creature was visible to determine that it had a snake or serpent-like body. This stayed consistent with the legend, nor would it stop here. Decades later, in June of 1984, the San Francisco Chronicle published an article about an event that happened a month earlier involving Tessie. Patsy McKay and Diane Stavrakis were hiking above the west shore of the lake together one day, where they supposedly witnessed a much clearer and even longer sighting of the creature. Looking at the water, they said they saw something whale-like, swimming and surfacing 3 times. It stretched about 10 to 15 feet long, emerging and submerging like a submarine, and sharing a serpentine appearance, only corroborating the already infamous descriptions. Interestingly, 2 previous people in 1982 shared a similar and slightly more in-depth experience. Gene St. Dennis and a friend of his were fishing near Cave Rock, the same place that was once home to the water babies. An early indicator of something being slightly off was the state in which some of their fish were caught. They were bitten and damaged by a predator that was much larger than them. Granted, St. Dennis alluded to the possibility of a white sturgeon or a muskie, but did not remove the chances of something more mysterious being the culprit either. Sometime during this trip, something bizarre happened. According to the fishermen, they saw a blotchy gray creature swimming nearby that they suspected to measure between 10 to 15 feet long. It left a V-shaped wake through the water and made noticeable sharp turns as well. Mind you, these are all stories circulating around only one of Lake Tahoe's many mysteries. Where Tessie remains relevant for some, other legends dot the area as well. For instance, there's rumored to be an elephant that sank to the bottom of the lake that was part of a traveling circus. Supposedly, it was transported across the lake via ferry when a storm suddenly struck, causing the boat to capsize and, sadly, sinking the massive animal. Over the years, visitors have claimed to have seen the outline of an elephant underneath the water's depths. Another creature associated with the lake's previous indigenous inhabitants is the legend of the Ong. The Ong is said to be another predator that serves as a cautionary tale, warning those who do not respect the nature of water. The creature is described to be larger than the size of any house, with a body resembling that of a giant eagle, yet with hard scales, webbed feet, and the face of a native person. The Ong's nest sits at the bottom of Lake Tahoe, apparently creating the water that feeds the lake instead of connecting to rivers to act as a trap. If something or someone ventures too close, the Ong makes quick work of it and eats it. For the unfortunate humans who become the creature's next meal, the legend states that their drowned souls are trapped there, forever stuck in the terrifying monster's nest. Enter the popular tale of Jacques Cousteau, a renowned oceanographer and explorer who was rumored to have seen something so unsettling at the bottom of Lake Tahoe that he refused to ever speak about it, taking the secret to his grave. It should be noted that the record of this particular trip ever happening is to be taken with a grain of salt, but it's worth mentioning all the same. The most popular version of the story says that in the 1970s, Jacques took a small submarine to the bottom of Lake Tahoe to uncover some of its secrets. Then, whatever he saw more than 1,600 feet down left him absolutely petrified. The only quote attached to his visit there was simply, "The world isn't ready for what is down there," never speaking a word of it ever again. Anything physical related to Cousteau's exploration, like pictures, were never released either. It should be noted that this is the second deepest lake in the United States, and as mentioned before, has reportedly been a corpse dumping site for decades. If sunken deep enough, the water's low temperatures could have very well preserved some of that dark evidence. That being said, if this expedition ever happened, what exactly could the oceanographer have seen? Besides Tahoe Tessie, the possibilities of what lurks below are seemingly endless. Today, Tessie, like many local legends across the country, has evolved into a local mascot, attracting visitors to Lake Tahoe in hopes of catching a glimpse of the enigmatic cryptid. Everything from toys and merchandise are sold in the name of Tessie, including the popular children's book, The Story of Tahoe Tessie, the original Lake Tahoe monster, released in the 1980s. And whether or not Tessie or the creature that inspired Tessie is no longer living, she's the least thing but forgotten. And just like Nessie of Loch Ness, Lake Tahoe will forever be associated with the unknown creature, among others. It's a big lake, yes, with many forms of aquatic wildlife populating its depths, but in that same breath, with many legends from its original native people that predate recorded U.S. history. Is Tahoe Tessie real? A culmination of other stories being credited to one creature? And could more than a century's worth of sightings all be false? These questions will likely continue until a definitive answer is found. But the more important question is, have any of you seen Tahoe Tessie?